Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Profiling Evil live from Australia. I don't even know how this is gonna work out tonight, but I'm getting kind of an odd echo, so I think I'm gonna pull these out of my ear. And will you please let me know in the chat box if you are hearing me all right? Because for some reason I'm getting a strange echo coming back. And now that I've cut that out, I'm not hearing it here anyway. But I hope you can hear me. I don't know that we're going to see many people on tonight. I'm even worried about what my bandwidth is like. So give me some feedback in the chat box, and let's see if you're getting everything there. But I just couldn't leave Australia. I'll be leaving next week, but I couldn't leave without doing a live from down here because there's so many of you folks that support me from down here. It's really great seeing starting to pop in. George says again, things are kind of slow here. I don't know if it's something goofy with my computer tonight. Again, so thanks, George. Cookie says hello. There we go. There we go. Now we're getting somewhere. Hi from Queensland. Hey, I was up in Brisbane last week for quite a few days, doing some work on the 2032 Olympics and talking to some folks. And then I headed back down south, been in Canberra, Melbourne, in Sydney right now. Looks like Jacqueline's calling in from Adelaide. My uncle actually lived in Adelaide for nearly 4 years on two separate occasions. So, Cheeky Llama. Hey, I don't know if any of you caught my video from a couple of days ago talking about Mr. Cruel again while I was over in Melbourne. I thought I'd go drive around a little bit and see where Mr. Cruel was doing his thing. It looks like Anina's from Switzerland. And hey, and by the way, I thought this might be kind of good for those of you in Europe and frankly in a whole bunch of places. It seems like I do everything based on US time. There's such a huge audience in the US, and frankly when I'm in the US it's a whole lot easier. But I'm really glad because this is great. Diane Phoenix, I think you're in the US, aren't you? What are you doing up so late at night? This is pretty crazy. Let's see. Hi, Mike. Let's see. You're a bit delayed, but all is good. Yeah, I think that's the hotel internet. So I apologize for that. And we'll see what happens. You can see Sydney in the background. So, Georgie, we're in the same neck of the woods right now. Jojo Wynn, good to see you here. And let's see. See Me Yummy dialing in from Melbourne. Yeah. I spent a couple of days in Melbourne, had some meetings there, and then caught the late flight over here to Sydney. So, yeah, it's so great. And it looks like Perth is dialing in. So all you folks in the States, we're hitting every region in the area. And we even got Idaho. Miss Marple, what are you doing up so late at night? That's looks like Janice is from Melbourne. And yeah, I think I must have been really close to your house. If you're in the northeast quadrant, I went out Mr. Cruel's hunting grounds, and of course was downtown, staying at the Latham. Is it the Langham? The Langham, which was an incredible hotel. That was pretty neat. Here we got Joey. It's got insomnia at 2:30 in the morning. Yeah, it's crazy. And usually it's some Aussie or somebody from Europe that's having to dial in the middle of the night. So this is really interesting. And you know what the heck? We got 130 people. It looks like coming in. We got St. Louis, Missouri on here. Anyway, all kinds of folks coming in. And Debbie Devaney says, I'm glad I finally caught alive. I don't know where you're dialing in from, but yeah, it looks like somebody else from up in Queensland. Let's see. Teacup. Yeah. Thank you for jumping on. Georgia, man, it's 4:30 in the morning there. And thanks, PB&J. Yeah, you guys have been so kind, wondering what's going on. And here we go. Poor Mike's in Australia, and most people on chatter are U.S. night owls. Well, there's a batch of Aussies getting on tonight, so this is really fun. And again, it's kind of my way of saying thanks to everybody down here. You always jump on at odd times, and I thought, what the heck? Why not jump on? It looks like even over in England now, 9:40 in the morning. So at least you didn't have to wake up in the middle of the night, Hazel. And by the way, today I met with and actually spent some time. I ran into him, one of the jewelers for the royal family, and he was showing me pictures with the royalty and things that they'd done, and that was pretty funny because we actually met over eating some Chinese food on the street corner. So it was really, really fun. But let's not waste your night. Other than thanks so much for jumping on. I wanted to talk a little bit about the murders in Moscow, Idaho. I jumped on with Ashley Banfield today on News Nation to talk about this HVAC, heating and air conditioning vehicle that showed up at the crime scene. Ashley had some questions she wanted me to answer in regard to that. So we spent a little time talking, and it was just kind of an enjoyable little chat. And I thought I ought to share it, and we'll talk a little bit about the case and go forward. So in kind of the style I've done before, I've cut a little video, saved a little stuff when I've had time, and glued it all together. And we'll talk a little bit as we go along. I'll try to watch the posts here as we go through this. So let's jump into it. Everybody, frustrations are mounting in the murder case of 4 college students, now entering its 3rd week since the brutal assault happened. The true crime community is going crazy, chasing all of the possibilities. And frankly, they're possibilities that in some cases have no facts to back them up. Today's biggie, the arrival of a heating and air conditioning man. The guy is at the murder scene. What do you think's going on in Moscow, Idaho? Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Profiling Evil. I'm to you from Australia. It's where I'm down here meeting with law enforcement in a whole bunch of different parts of the country. Australia is incredibly vast, and it takes a long time to travel from point A to point B. In the evenings, though, I head out on my own to look into cold cases from across the region. These are cases that I've highlighted on Profiling Evil and also on my sister podcast. Well, thank you so much, Rhino Girl. That is really kind of you, and I'll try not to talk over myself, but I had to say thank you. With Ashley Banfield, we're talking about the Moscow murders and some of the new developments that have come out of Idaho today. So I hope you're going to take a minute, hit that like and subscribe button. That way you're going to get all of our notifications when we put out new videos like this one. So let's cover this late breaking news in this case. Hey, but first, folks, I want to revisit the facts on this. Again, you know me, I'm all about facts. Here they are. On the evening of November 12th, Kaylee Gonsalves and Madison Moglen were at a local bar. It was called the Corner Club. In the early morning hours, they drug into the early morning hours, and on the 13th, were seen at a little food truck called the Grub Truck. And by about 1:56 in the morning, they were back in their home on King Road. Now, this was confirmed by digital evidence, so there's no getting around the fact that they were back there. Now, just before the 2 young women arrived home, their roommate and her friend, Ethan Chapin, Zaina Kernodle, were seen leaving a party at the Sigma Chi house. Ethan decides to stay the night with Kernodle, who lives at the residence. The two roommates that survived were also out in the
Gotta
community,
mention, it's
but
great
they
to have Abu
returned home
Dhabi
about
on
an
with us
hour
tonight. Thanks
before
again,
the other
Rhino
4
Girl.
victims got home. Now, 11 hours later, the 911 center began receiving 911 calls about unresponsive people in the home. Responding officers discovered the homicides, which occurred on the second and third floor. The two victims that survived were down on the first floor. Now, the autopsies were conducted 4 days later, and the coroner confirmed that all 4 victims died of stabbing wounds, probably while sleeping, even though some appeared to have some defensive wounds, which I think would be just kind of a normal reaction. There's no sign of sexual assault, according to the police department. And the theories that suggested that Kaylee was being stalked, they haven't been proven yet. People keep talking about it, but the police keep reminding us that they followed up on hundreds of leads and they haven't been able to substantiate that that was going on. So I think talking about it a whole lot is kind of inappropriate, but let's see it. I mean, it still could be pretty important. Now, police confirmed that a fixed blade knife was used in the assault, but they have little more to offer from the 113 pieces of physical evidence that they've recovered, the 4,000 photographs that they've taken of the crime scene, and the hundreds of digital files that they've examined. But this doesn't mean that the case has gone cold. So while the true crime community, in my opinion, recklessly accuses some people of the crime, police have made it clear that they don't have a named suspect yet. We all have feelings, we all have thoughts, we all have gut impressions, but you know what? It just seems like it's a little bit reckless to go out pointing the finger until more information comes out. In particular, the man at the food truck. He's become the center of a lot of speculation. Now, some people say that he's the guy. Some people say the fact that he left town means and proves that he's the guy. I don't know that I'm there yet. But the thing that's kind of troubling me is police said that the male in the Grubhub video, the Grub Truck video, is now cleared of any responsibility in the crime. Has anybody ever heard police really clarify which male in the video they're talking about? Because there's quite a few in that video. Now, I'm hanging on to the hope that police are on top of this case, on top of this individual, on top of the alibis that are coming out, and are on top of this investigation generally. Police don't believe that the roommates were involved. And they don't think the person that drove Kaylee and Madison home is involved. Those are all facts. They've ruled out the roommates. And as they said over and
Hey,
again,
Snug
they're
with
trying
Pugs,
to
thank you
stomp
so
out
much.
false facts. Facts that are being spread, mostly by the true crime community online. Now, the last formal update was given by Captain Roger Lanier just a few days ago. There's been a brief statement by the chief in addition to that shortly after, but I want to first focus on that briefing by Captain Lanier. Let's listen in on this.
I want to assure you first.
Hey, I want to pause there just long enough to let PB&J know, yeah, I think the things might be out of sync a little bit because the bandwidth isn't that great in the hotel. And actually, I'm in a really nice hotel in downtown Sydney. You can see over my shoulder here the city highlights looking out to Sydney Harbor. But yeah, it's a little bit out of sync and just doing the best we can tonight. So, hey, what are your thoughts so far? We're kind of talking through facts. And, you know, I've been a little bit troubled because we really want to chase the seedy stuff and kind of hypothesize without a whole lot of evidence to back it up. But that always worries me a little bit. And I obviously have made my point and said that enough that I don't need to say it again. Other than, yeah, let's see what Diane says. I need to get a hotel room next to their Wi-Fi. Oh, yeah. Well, usually I have really good Wi-Fi, and I don't know what happened here, but this is not very good. So
thanks for your patience with that, and hopefully you just close your eyes and we'll put you to sleep. So and Avery, yeah, I've been in Australia for the last couple of weeks, just working with law enforcement on a number of different issues, and hoping that by the weekend I'm on a plane heading home. So it's been a lot of fun. But let's jump back into this now. Again, it's a shortened version of the press conference. Some of you have probably already heard it. Hopefully you'll pick up a few things, and then we'll just keep chatting a little bit.
The loss of Xana, Kaylee, Madison, and Ethan remains the highest priority for the Moscow Police Department. We will continue putting all of our resources into investigating and solving these murders. Investigators are prepared to work through the Thanksgiving holiday to continue their efforts. Today I'm going to recap in brief what we know. I'm going to provide some new information, and I'm going to address some rumors. On the evening of November 12th and into the early morning hours of November 13th, Kaylee and Madison arrived home at approximately 1:45 a.m. after visiting a local bar and a street food vendor. Ethan and Xana were also out in the community at Sigma Chi, and they arrived home at approximately 1:45 a.m. Two surviving roommates who were also out in the community arrived home at approximately 1 a.m. Later, on the morning of November 13th, at 11:58 a.m., a 911 call was placed. The call reported an unconscious person. The call originated from inside the residence, and a surviving roommate's cell phone was used. During that call, the dispatcher spoke to multiple people who were on scene. Moscow police officers responded and found two victims, two on the second floor and two on the third floor of 1122 King Road. The results of autopsies indicated that the four were stabbed multiple times and were likely asleep during the attack. Some had defensive wounds, and there was no sign of sexual assault. We do not believe the following individuals were involved: the two surviving roommates, the male seen in a grub truck video circulating on the internet, a private party who drove Kaylee and Madison home, any of the individuals who spoke to the dispatcher on the 911 call. We're also aware of a male whom Madison and Kaylee had called several times the morning of November 13th, and we do not suspect that individual. Detectives have canvassed the neighborhoods looking for evidence, physical evidence, video surveillance, and they've contacted numerous residents to see if anybody may have seen or heard anything. They continue requesting tips that can be sent to our tip line or called into our tip line. The specific areas that we're interested in are detailed on maps on our city website and our Facebook page, but as stated earlier, generally south of Taylor Avenue to Palouse River Drive, and the area west of US 95 over to the Arboretum. We have heard mention that Kaylee stated she may have had a stalker. Detectives have been looking into that, and to this point have been unable to corroborate the statement, although we continue to seek information and tips regarding that.
So I want to pause there just long enough to hit on that, and I want to see what the comments are coming in, because this one is pretty significant to me, because regardless of police saying over and again, we haven't been able to establish and validate that, we keep talking about it. What are your thoughts? I mean, does that frustrate you that we continue to talk about it? Do you think police are hiding something from us? What is this compulsion we have to chase ghost stories rather than facts? And I'd like to see what your comments are. So I'm going to just pause for a moment here and watch, and maybe make a couple of comments here. Lisa, Glenn, yeah, thank you. Love being in Oz, and it's a marvelous place. Everyone should make sure you plan to get down here, but don't spend all your time in the cities, because that's not the cool part of Australia from in my point of view. Now, don't get mad at me if I said something that bothered you. I just prefer to get out in the woods. I don't know if any of you saw when I decided to rent a car and head off into the hills and then start hiking in the trees so I could find some kangaroos. But if not, go back and watch my little kangaroo video. Yeah, insufficient evidence available to the public, yet we still really point fingers, don't we? I think this is a good point here, Brown Skittle. It's only the beginning, and we do want to have answers as quick as we can, don't we? Now, here's interesting. Hazel thinks maybe police are hiding something. And let's see. Let me get back up to that. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to key to truth. I'll come back to you. Maybe the police are hiding something, and I don't blame them. Yeah, I mean, there are certain cards that you hold close to the vest because they are the things that will really help you corroborate either positively or negatively things in a case. So welcome to Oz. Thank you. You're very kind. Let's see here. Gail, yeah, the gossip and speculation, get them listeners. Yeah, I guess I'm not very good at that part of it. Let's see here. Jen, if there is a target, is it unusual that the murder killed 3 more? Your thoughts? I think some people have talked about it already, and I know the first video I mentioned and kind of went through this with Vinnie Politan on Court TV, but the idea is that sometimes a suspect gets so focused on the primary target that they get a little bit of tunnel vision, and then they have to clean up and get rid of anyone who might see something additional. Now, the interesting thing was, if everyone was killed in their bed, this was more about the process of murdering. And while there still may be sexual stimulation for the predator, the police have been very clear there wasn't a sexual assault, but that doesn't necessarily mean that wasn't in part of the motivation, and oftentimes is in these kinds of things. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this one rolls out. Matt, thanks a lot for that donation. I appreciate it. It's great to be down here. And you know what? We actually did one of the mapping locations, and I want you to respond here in Cairns. I hope I said it right, because I think I was corrected by a lot of Aussies on that. But working on the Flinders Highway murders, some work I did on that particular case, Cairn. I went up through that area. So now I expect you to write back and say how close I got to saying it either incorrect, or if I was close, or if I just absolutely massacred it. See, Brown Skillet says everyone's out to hear the rest of the Delphi recording Libby made. Yeah. I don't know. I agree right here, though. There needs to be a delicate balance between protecting the case and letting family and media have information. But I'm going to chat a little bit. I'm going to bring out Dylan Rounds just as an example of when it can go bad, because you got to have the cops on your side, even if you're a little bit frustrated. And the cops got to have family on their side in case they have to have some communications. I don't know. It's a Well, folks, I don't know if you saw that, but it went completely dark on my side. So let me know if you can hear me again. If you got me back, it looked like I was kicked out for a second there, but now I got Kyrie who says dropped off. But tell me if I'm back on now. It looks like I am from my perspective, but I don't know. Please send me a note here if you. Okay, thanks, Tracy Lynn. Says we're good, and I'm back. So anyway, let's jump back in to this a little further.
And I'm going to have to recapture that video and try to scoot up to where we were. So please forgive me. We'll have a little bit of a replay here. Everybody, frustrations
Numerous residents.
for them had to be cleaned up and corrected and pulled back a little bit. Well, now we're seeing those controlled responses. Those okay, so what I'm talking about here and what I wanted to get back into is a part of the thing that Ashley wanted to talk to me about is some
on
canned responses.
police
So here we
department
go.
public information officers to ask him questions and then record his responses where they can edit them, much like I do for this video here often. Then he supplies the video to the press and to the public. Now, Ashley referenced these canned responses and this strategy by the police department as they were releasing the victim's property today, commenting that the video was prepared by the police department and issued without giving the media any kind of a chance to respond. She wondered how I felt about this, and frankly, I ended up complimenting the police department.
Wasn't even close.
Suggesting, in my opinion, that it's a way for them to control the narrative and not have missteps like they've already had in a couple of circumstances. I mean, think back to the early days of this investigation when the chief said nothing for the community to worry about. He had to step back on that, you remember? And then the DA stubbed his toe and had to be cleaned up and corrected and pulled back a little bit. Well, now we're seeing those controlled responses, those written responses that are much easier to make sure that very clear and concise information gets out to you and me. Frankly, the way some things get spun out, it makes pretty good sense. But I'm going to be interested in what your thoughts are on that. You know, I know that there's also quite a bit of frustration being expressed by family members, investigators, private lawyers, anything they can to help find out more information. Whenever there's a private investigator involved, it's much more successful if it's a relationship where the private investigator can work with police, not an adversarial role. And we've seen in some cases where these adversarial roles, I think, become very negative. I think the Dylan Rounds case is a perfect example of where things became so adversarial that no information is being shared. That's a real tragedy. We saw it in other cases that we've talked about on Profiling Evil. But over and again, when the police department gives too much information to family members or to the public, it leaks out and it damages the investigation. So you got to remind police often that it is important that there's a victim advocate who can step into that middle ground between investigators who are in the trenches and family members who really need information. They need to know that something's happening. But I wanted to take a moment and let you just listen to this most recent example where the police department is providing canned responses and kind of controlling the narrative. Let's listen into the police chief.
Tomorrow, me and my command team and other individuals will be going in to box up personal belongings of the people that live there. And we're going to be getting those items back to the families. It's time for us to get those things back that really mean something to those families and hopefully to help with some of their healing.
You know, I thought it was an interesting touch here because now the public information officer asks the chief why he's personally involved in this case. I can give you a really strong reason why he's personally involved. He's the chief. He's responsible. He's the last rung on the ladder. He's responsible for what his officers are doing, what the state is doing, and what the FBI is doing. He still owns that investigation. He better darn well be involved in this thing from get-go. But what we're seeing is this humanizing of the chief as he talks about what it would be like to get back personal items. I think it was a really good move. Let's listen in.
We have a lot of investigators investigating, and I'm not tied into the investigation side of of it where I'm physically interviewing people, and it's important to me. It's important for us as a department to go in and take care of the families and get the items for them so that they can have some of those back and some of those memories back that are fond memories. And you know, I'm a dad. I understand the, you know, the meaning behind some of those things. It may be something that, you know, we gave one of our children or something, and we're just trying to bring some of that healing.
And as this video kind of comes to the end, the chief takes the opportunity to remind the public that there is still an incredible amount of work that needs to be done on this investigation, and that evidence gathering, witness interviews, and so much more has to happen. Well, you know,
We're at that point in the investigation where we're still gathering information, we're still gathering tips, we're still gathering evidence, we're still doing everything we need to do. But there also comes a point in time when the family needs to have those belongings back, the ones that we can get them back. They've asked for some of those things back, so we're ready to take care of that for them.
Well, you know, as I met with Ashley Bancroft today on News Nation, she turned our focus towards something that was really new, quite strange, but happening as part of this investigation. And that was that all of a sudden, a heating and air conditioning vehicle showed up at the scene and went into the murder scene. Let's listen to Ashley and I talk about this. Hey, you know, I'm going to pause there for a moment because Lauren N brought up a great question that I wanted to get your sense on, and that is the new description of the white, I think it was a Hyundai, that has come out. Do you consider that a distraction in the case, helpful for the case? What are your thoughts? I want to see what you're weighing in on, and then I'll share you my thoughts on why that's coming out now. Some have expressed frustration of why are the police now asking for it. And frankly, think about the massive amount of video evidence that the police department is going through. Not only perhaps in-car video from the body cams that the officers are wearing, but doorbell cameras and everything else. As they're processing all that, somebody may have seen this vehicle in the area and said, wait a minute, didn't know about this. We need to get a little more information on. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? And here's an interesting question from Dern Emily writing. Do you think this is a one-off crime, or do you think it's the start of a serial or the continuation of a serial predator? Really hard to know. So this is why it's so important that we have victimology and we really study who these children were, these victims, that we understand the order in which those offenses occurred. So we understand who the primary targets are and secondary targets, who just was murdered because of business, or was it all part of the fantasy? All of those things help us to really start to understand more about serial predation and whether or not this might be a long list of events that have happened over time. So I don't know if that's a really short one. We can go back and talk about that a little later. Matt, thanks for that Aussie $5. Did you hear about Toya Cordinger case? I don't know anything about that. Be a good one to stick on the evidence room. I don't know. There's so many cases down here. I think I'm going to be back down in February for some more work, but we'll I don't know. We'll have to see if I can look at that. Yeah, Erica, Australia is amazing. The ecosystems here are amazing. There's nothing like, and I can honestly say I've seen koalas in the wild, and they are incredible. You just have to look up in some places. And of course, kangaroos are amazing, but I've been in every state in Australia, and I just love the people and I love the country. I've been in the Northern Territories where crocodiles are on the street, and I've worked with the military in Northern Territories where they go days and days and days without mobile connectivity. It's just an amazing country. Then I've been in New Zealand and worked in And I'll tell you what, folks, hopefully you're all back again. We're going to hustle this along because this is not that great of a. So, as great as the country is, in this really expensive hotel, the Wi-Fi is just not that good. So, hopefully, just let me know you're back and you're hearing me so that I make sure I'm following through. Now, let me get through the rest of this stuff that I've created on the interview today, guys, for dragging this on this way. I didn't mean for it to happen this way, but we're going to just wrap up this discussion with the chief
Those belongings back, the ones that we can,
and then go into
get
my
them back.
interview with
They've
Ashley
asked for
on
some of those things back.
the case. I
we're
shouldn't
ready
have pulled
to
off,
take care
but
of
I
that for
did.
them.
Well, you know, as I met with Ashley Bancroft today on News Nation, she turned our focus towards something that was really new, quite strange, but happening as part of this investigation. And that was that all of a sudden, a heating and air conditioning vehicle showed up at the scene and went into the murder scene. Let's listen to Ashley and I talk about this.
Mike, thanks so much for joining me tonight. The simple question is this. Sure, seeing an HVAC repair person showing up underneath crime tape and going into an active crime scene raises a lot of eyebrows. Could it be as simple as they needed to just keep the heat on, or could an investigator actually assistance of somebody who knows air ducts and air systems?
I think that's really the two ends of the spectrum, isn't it? Actually, it's possible that this could be as benign as the heating went out on the building and they needed to get that thing going again, or it could be more complex. It could be that they are calling in professionals to assist the crime scene investigators in collecting filters and any evidence they could get from the filtration system of the home, the air ducts and other areas. Or it could be something as simple as they want to go back and take another look at the forensics inside of the home, and humidity is a problem, and they want to try to change the humidity in there so that they have a little better chance of collecting some evidence that otherwise is more difficult to see when you have lower humidity. So I think you got to kind of look at it from both ends of the spectrum, not get too focused on one or the other until they release a little information. And frankly, it could be preparatory now that we're seeing all of this evidence start to leave the home. It could be preparatory to starting some disaster cleanup, including cleaning up that HVAC system. Well, hey, folks, I'm pausing to share some concerns I have surrounding identity theft and fraud. I've learned a lot from our partner, Aura. They're the pros at protecting people from cyber predators. Aura provides identity theft protection, credit and fraud protection, and online and device security for you and your family. They taught me to think twice before answering those online questionnaires designed to steal our personal information. You know, it must be working because U.S. statistics show that 33% of us have been victimized by identity theft at an annual cost of more than $56 billion each year. Our protection plans come with around-the-clock support, a money-back guarantee, and $1 million theft policy. But here's the best part. You can try Aura for free by clicking on this special Profiling Evil link in the description down below. When you do, we get a small commission. But think about it. You insure your car and you insure your house. Don't you think it's time to insure your identity? Now let's get back to today's discussion. Well, folks, take a moment and hit the pause button and maybe enter your comments down below about why you think the heating and air conditioning guy is on site at the murder scene. I mean, does it make sense that law enforcement would turn over the collection of evidence to a heating and air conditioning guy? Or is this guy working in tandem with and for the police department in maybe gathering some additional information? I'm going to be really interested in your answers down below, and I'm going to be reading them, so I hope you'll take a moment, and also that you'll respond to each other. And folks, as you finish today's video, I hope you'll take some time and do a little research on the web about the impact that humidity can have on a crime scene. And frankly, is it a possibility in your mind that this was all about changing humidity in the house so more forensic evidence, perhaps DNA and blood transfer, could be collected as they prepare to wrap up this crime scene. Now, let's catch a little more of our discussion today on News Nation.
So, people online speculated they're looking in the air ducts for the missing knife, etc. And that is definitely not something that you would, bring in the HVAC guy for. However, I did wonder about intake systems. For instance, if some part of a crime scene or a struggle happened near an intake, I wondered if that might be something that an investigator would say, there may be clothing fibers, there may be skin cells of the perpetrator that went into this air intake. Would that be something that the investigators themselves could harvest, or would they need a professional? And could that professional do it in a way that wouldn't taint the evidence or the crime scene?
Yeah, I think that that's where it really gets tricky, because we don't know if this individual was working in tandem with CSI to collect pieces of evidence. They have equipment like snakes with cameras on it that law enforcement could be leaning upon just to snake the ventilation system and see if there's anything that jumps out at them. If you said, I want to have somebody clean my ductwork, they're going to show you how ugly your ductwork looks by running a camera down there. So it may be that they have sophisticated equipment to allow them to do that. Or it could be as specific as saying, we want to very systematically remove the filters. We want to pull each individual cover to the HVAC system, and then look at that. And why not have an expert with us on the front end while the actual crime scene experts are backing them up and collecting things that they may or may not find. But again, I kind of go back to this whole idea of they're getting pretty close to what appears to be winding down. Could it be that they're starting to look at disaster cleanup, or maybe the heat went out?
Well, as we kind of wrapped up, Ashley pulled out the big guns and asked me if I thought this was becoming a cold case. This is a tough question to answer, but I did the best that I can, given the small amount of information that I have, and frankly, like you, the information you have, because all we can do is search the internet and watch other news sources. Let's listen in as Ashley and I talk about cold cases.
Or maybe the heat went out. One last question. I only have 30 seconds left, but since you were the director of a cold case unit, you are the perfect person to ask. A lot of people are rumbling, has this case gone cold? Be the arbiter of what cold case actually means. And when you start to actually bring in people, like Mike King and the cold case unit.
I think cold case is really a tough word, and it's almost definitional by jurisdiction, but I don't think this is in any way, shape, or form close to being cold. I think they have hundreds of tips that they're still trying to follow up on. They have hundreds of things that they're developing. They have a ton of kids that went away for Thanksgiving and now the holidays and haven't come back to school that they haven't had the chance to interview one-on-one. A video interview doesn't quite cut the same interview as being able to look into someone's face and see the reactions as they go through things. So I think they're a long ways from this being cold. That said, you got to treat it like a cold case and start bringing all the resources you can to support. And this department has done a pretty impressive job of rallying the state and federal resources to back them up. It doesn't look like there are real egos that are standing in the way of trying to find the truth.
It's important to mention that because the state and the FBI don't talk much. They really work behind the scenes, and they could be doing a heck of a lot of work that no one knows about. So while everyone's screeching that there doesn't seem to be anything happening, there could be a lot happening. Mike, I sure hope you're going to come back on the show. It was really enlightening. Thank you for that.
Well, there you go, folks. What are your thoughts on this one? I mean, without saying names, think of the most recent individual who's been highlighted on social media. Do you find it odd that this person isn't being spotlighted on mainstream media? Now, is that because we're more nimble in the social media world, or is it that we're a little more reckless? I'm going to be watching for your answers down below, and I'm going to leave it to you to decide. But I think as you become accustomed, I'm going to stay a little more fact-based in the kinds of things that I'm discussing here on Profiling Evil. Well, thanks for taking time to listen in tonight. Next week, I'm going to be back in the United States, but I'm going to be going live in just a minute for my friends down under. So while the rest of you are sleeping,
we're going to go live for those people that always have to get on at a weird time. So if you're here in Australia or you're in Europe and in the UK, hopefully you're going to be able to watch us live in just a few moments. Then I'm going to head back to the United States next week and try to figure out how to sleep in a new time zone. And I want to just make one more mention. While I was down here, I met with two women, a woman named Olivia Mastery and Stephanie Paul of the Phillips Group. The Phillips Group helped my friends over at Esri Australia to create all the publicity around the Mapping Evil podcast, leading to an International Public Relations Association Golden Award for their efforts. So the awards are stacking up. I mean, wow. And so if you haven't listened to Mapping Evil, folks, you're missing out. Season 2 is called Killing Betty. And I think you're going to find it fascinating. And frankly, you're going to love what I'm going to release in February about the Betty Shanks case. So you're going to want to know this story a little bit on the inside and a little bit on the out. Now make sure you're hitting that like and subscribe. Well, there you go. Now, somebody weigh in. I don't know why Gamer Guy keeps putting the same thing in, but I'm about ready to throw him off the island. So somebody tell me if I'm missing something here or not, because this is just goofy and looks like somebody trying to get attention. But hey, by the way, I wanted to say to Tracy from Bundy, thanks so much. Appreciate that kind donation. And Gamer Guy, I don't know what you're doing, but you're toast in my. So anyway, he's gone. Thanks everybody, and I'm sorry it took me so long. I was trying to be decent, and for some reason, got a few of the wacky things going on tonight. So now I lost my train of thought. So let's see if there's some questions. Oh, who killed Betty? Man, if you're from Queensland, you know Betty Shanks is the coldest cold case in Queensland history. And just last week, I drove to Betty's house, and I drove to the place where she was killed and talked to the people that own the home there. And we spent some time. They actually listened to Mapping Evil, which was really kind of fun because we sat, we talked out in the yard for an hour or so and had a delightful visit. They allowed me to go into the backyard and film where Betty's body was recovered and talk about the case and some of the evolution of the case. And I think some of the stuff we're going to release on that will be kind of interesting to you. He was killed in 1952, 70 years ago in September. And I went to Betty's grave as well and spent a little time at her grave. And the people that I was with who are intimate to the case, I'll show a little video of again in a couple months, but want to make sure that it's done at the right time. So anyway, it's been a blast being on with you. I got a couple of things I want to wrap up with, but I want to see if there are any questions or anything you all want to talk to. But for everybody down here that is now watching at a decent hour, rather than having to do it at like the people in the States are right now at 3-4 o'clock in the morning. Thanks so much for your support. And of course, for everybody that helps out, I really appreciate all that you do. I'm going to say it here in a second. We don't grow fast, but we grow steady. And that's very meaningful to me. So thanks again, everybody. Share Profiling Evil with all your friends. You know, we don't grow very quickly, but we continue to grow at a steady pace. And it's because of folks like you. So please share us. We're not that sensational, and we certainly aren't very fancy, but we do believe in the power of the true crime community. And we do have hopes that the information that we're sharing helps you reduce your own risk, maybe the risk of your loved ones. So in addition to checking out Mapping Evil, make sure that you're also subscribing to Profiling Evil on your favorite podcast platform. And then make sure you get over to profilingevil.com and sign up for the digital newsletter, the B.O.L.O. Now, the holidays, they're rapidly approaching, so if you're looking for a great Christmas gift, please consider one of my latest 2 books, Deceived, an investigative memoir of the Zion Society cult, or She Knew No Fear. You can get them either on Amazon, or you can go and get a hardbound copy, even signed, at profile.com. Hey, thanks again, folks. I'm going to head out to Sydney Harbor and check out what's going on tonight after our live. And I'll see you soon.